All right, we're going to look at solving equations that have absolute values in them. We've solved equations before, they just didn't have an absolute value sign in them. There's actually not that much difference. There's a couple extra steps we got to throw in here, but for the most part, this should be fairly simple. So you can see it says evaluate each expression if x equals -1, y equals 3, and z equals -4. So just like before, we're going to rewrite this problem, but we're going to replace whatever variables, whatever letters we have with the numbers they give us. So for number 1, I'm going to do 16 minus, little vertical bar is my absolute value sign, so absolute value of 2, and because we have the z, my instructions tell me z is -4 plus 1, close it with an absolute value bar. Now to start with, absolute value kind of works like parentheses. So if we're going to solve this and we're going to do the proper order of operations, then we need to use our parentheses or do our parentheses first. So I'm not going to mess with the 16. It can stay right where it is, minus absolute value. And I want to do all the stuff inside the absolute value first. 2 times -4, well, that's -8 plus 1. All right, I still have stuff in the absolute value. So that's now going to be 16 minus, because I haven't messed with that, the absolute value of -8 plus 1. So -8 plus 1 is -7. And we still have absolute value bars. Now, the technical definition of absolute value is a number's distance from 0. Really, all it does is make numbers positive, because how far is -7 from 0? Well, it's 7 spaces. You will never have a number come out of the absolute value and be positive. Be negative, shoot. So the absolute value of -7 is really just 7. 16 minus 7, well, that's 9. All right, let's do it again with number 2. So write the absolute value. I'm going to replace x with -1 minus the y value, which is 3, absolute value plus 4. Since absolute value works like parentheses, I'm going to do everything inside there. And the only thing I can do is take -1 and subtract 3 from it, which gives me -4. Once it's down to one number, I can do the absolute value. The absolute value turns it positive. So the absolute value of -4 is just 4. Bring down my plus 4. And 4 plus 4 is 8. Now we have to actually solve. So notice it doesn't tell me what x is or what y is. I am expected to solve this like we've done before. There's also a number line, and it's going to ask me to graph these on a number line. So I'm going to start with number 1. If this did not have the absolute value bars on it, I could say that y equals 3, and my answer is just 3. How easy is that? But the absolute value causes us to have one extra step. That one extra step is that before we ever get started, we actually have to write 2 problems. So I'm going to split this equation into 2 equations. One of them, all I do is write it without the absolute value on it, y equals 3. The other one, I write it without the absolute value, but I change the sign that's on the number opposite from the absolute value. So now my 3 is -3. Since there's no solving to be done here, these are my answers, and I need to graph them. So I would put a dot at 3, and I would put a dot at -3, and it's graphed. So I have both answers, and I have graphed it. All right, let's take a look at number 2. Same thing. I'm going to rewrite this. Absolute value of x minus 4 equals 4. We're going to rewrite it as 2 separate problems. I get rid of the absolute value sign and keep it exactly the same. For the second one, I get rid of the absolute value sign, but this time I make the answer negative. Change the sign on. Okay, I'm going to solve this first one. X minus 4 equals 4. So I would plus 4 to both sides. Make it 8. Put a dot on the graph. I'm done with that one. For the other one, I'm still going to plus 4. Negative 4 plus 4 makes 0. So that's my second answer. You can almost cheat a little bit on these. Maybe not necessarily cheat, but you can definitely check your answers to see if they're reasonable. If we had come out with an answer for this one of like 12, notice that my number line doesn't have 12. Then there's no way that would be the right answer. Okay, number 4. We rewrite it as two separate equations. One of them exactly the same, we just don't have the absolute value on it. The other one exactly the same, but we change the sign on the answer. And then we solve both of these. It says it's b plus 2, I would subtract 2 from both sides of the equal sign. 3 minus 2 is 1. I would minus 2 on both sides of the other one. Negative 3 minus 2 makes negative 5. I put both my dots. My answer's good, it's done. For number 5, rewrite it. Exactly the same, but without the absolute value sign. Rewrite it again. Change the sign on the answer. To solve the first one, I would plus 2. 5 plus 2 makes 7. Make sure I do it on both sides. Now, 7 is not a dot on my graph because it goes even. But it should be somewhere halfway between 6 and 8. Do the other one. I'm going to add 2. That gives me negative 3. And again, that's going to be somewhere between negative 2 and negative 4. Good enough. For 2x equals 8, we drop the absolute value. Write it twice. The second one, change the sign on the number. To solve this, it's 2 times x, so we would divide both sides by 2. Get x equals 4. Divide both sides by 2. Get x equals negative 4. Dots on the graph. Call it done. For number 8, rewrite it. It's 2 equations. Change the sign on the answer. Now this one's a 2-step one. I have 5 times y, and I have a minus 2. We're going to get rid of the minus 2 first. Remember, that was our correct order to do things. So since this is a minus 2, I'm going to plus 2 on both sides. That gives me 5y equals 9. Divide by the 5. That gives me y equals 9/5. All right, this is my answer. The problem is I can't graph 9/5, not easily. So what you can do is actually divide these two numbers. Now, you can divide it by hand, or you can just divide it in the calculator. 9 divided by 5 actually makes like 1.8. I don't want to see that 1.8 answer. I want to see the fraction answer that I just gave you. But it's so much easier to graph 1.8 than it is 9/5 because 1.8 should be somewhere around in there. For the second one, same thing. I would plus 2 on both sides. 5y equals negative 5. Divide by 5. Y equals negative 1. That one we do have a dot for, makes it simple. going to rewrite this one twice. D minus 100 equals 50. D minus 100 equals negative 50. Plus 100. D equals 150. Plus 100. D equals 50. Write it twice. 2x minus 1 equals 11. 2x minus 1 equals negative 11. Plus 1. Divide by 2. I get 6. Same exact steps on the second one. Plus 1. Divide by 2. Don't have a negative 5. Should be somewhere between negative 4 and 6. Now this is the opposite. I have been given the graph and I am asked to find an absolute value equation. So we're going to write the equation. To write the equation, you actually need to find the middle. So between the two dots, I have a number 10, I count. There's my start dot, my end dot. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So if I want to find the middle, if I count over 2, then my middle is right there. My middle is at negative 4. Get rid of all that so we can see. Okay, so I write down negative 4. I also need to know how far the dots are from the center point. Well, that was 2. Now there's a little, let's call it a formula to this. I've got my two numbers. For my equation, we can use whatever variable we want to. I'm going to write x. And it's going to be x minus this number that we wrote down equals 2 with an absolute value on it. Minus a minus, though, is the same thing as plus. Okay, there's my equation. So if you want to, what you can do is start with something that looks like this. Absolute value, x minus, and equals. You're going to fill in a number here, and you're going to fill in a number here. The number next to the x is going to be the middle point. So on number 14, the middle point between the two dots is 1. And the equals is going to be how far that middle dot is from either of the edge dots. So if 1 is my middle dot, 1, 2, so the answer is 2. That's my equation. It's as simple as that, as long as you remember, start with x minus and equals with the absolute value on it. Middle number, we put m there for middle number if we want to. And this is your distance, and we just fill them in. Just like on number 10 though, if you have minus a minus, make sure you change it to a plus. Okay, so let's try it again. Now this one, we got to find the middle. I think it's at negative 3, but let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so negative 3 is definitely my middle. So we're going to start with x minus equals. We're going to fill in our middle number. We're going to fill in the distance. My middle number was -3, and I already counted my distance was 4. Here I have a minus minus, so I do need to rewrite this as x plus 3 because of the minus and the negative together equals 4. So the absolute value of x plus 3 equals 4 is my answer. This is a challenge problem. I'm going to let you fill it in, and you tell me what the answer is. Now, this has absolutely nothing to do with absolute value. But we have spent a while now solving equations. I think some of you might be able to do this. Give it your best shot. Good luck.